In today's JSB Talks Digital, I'm joined by PR and marketing expert Janet Murray, who is in Kent, outside London. Janet, you're very welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So your background is similar to mine. You've worked in journalism and in PR, and I think you've got experience in every aspect of media that there is. Now you're stepping into the digital world, and I probably say that you're at the cutting edge of it. How would you describe this shift in communications over the past 10 years since Twitter was born?
So that's a really interesting question. I think that the traditional media is changing. I don't think it's not relevant anymore. I don't even think it's less relevant. I just think it's got a different. And I think that it's really important that people working in communications and marketing, that they're kind of moving with that shift rather than resisting it. And I'm seeing a lot of people resisting it.
Do you think that there's a need then for those working in traditional marketing, media and PR to upskill in case they get left behind?
Definitely. I think that traditional PR for me, for example, I don't think it's dead. I just think that it just needs to be considered as one of many things that you can be doing to promote your organisation and to talk about your organisation. And also, I even think that some media outlets are a little bit out of date themselves, and they're not necessarily as social media savvy or content savvy as they could be. So that's actually an opportunity, I think, for anybody working in this space. I think we don't have to stand around and wait to be picked anymore. It's like we don't have to wait for big news outlets like radio and TV to come and find us. We can be out there creating our own, making a massive impact without anybody coming to find us. We can actually be creating content that's attracting the attention of the traditional press, the media, really, really good content. So I feel like we're in a more powerful position than we were before. I think in the past, there was only really one way to get your message out there in the kind of mainstream media. But I feel this is a really exciting time because, like I say, you don't have to stand around and wait to be picked any longer.
That's very interesting. I'm currently reading Mark Schaefer's book, Known, and Mark talks exactly about that process, I guess. It's not even a concept because it's real. How individuals from different industries right across the world are making a big name for themselves. But not only that, they're actually commercializing into global business owners by virtue of their content. But I guess we need to put a disclaimer out at this stage. It's not simply that easy to get known overnight. It takes some time. What are your tips for people who want to get known, as Mark Schaefer describes it?
Well, it's interesting. I was thinking about this yesterday. I was putting together some content. I was thinking about this, and I think if you try to get known, so actually, I think we were having a conversation about this recently, but if you set out to try and become an influencer, then I think you're kind of doomed to fail. So if you try to become influential or you try to be known, if you just set out to be the best possible person in your industry, so the best possible content creator you can possibly be, the most helpful person, the person who's out there educating people about what it is that you do in the best possible way, in the most useful, helpful way, then I think you can't help but get known. But I think people who go out there and they think, oh, I want to become an influencer or I want to become well known, that's when you tend to kind of fall flat on your face. But if you actually look, I just want to create really, really great content that really helps people, that really makes a difference, that makes their day better, that makes their job easier, or whatever it might be, I think that is the key to getting known. And also, I think you do have to be patient, like you said. Like I often talk about how my podcast has been probably one of the most influential things that I've done for my business in terms of attracting the right kind of people to me. But it wasn't attracting the right kind of people to me in the first 10, 20, 30, 40, even 50 episodes. Actually, it's bringing me the right people now, like 2 years on, or maybe a year in, it was bringing me that. But I had to go through, I think we have to create bad content almost in order to get to the stage where we're creating good content. Obviously, my bad content wasn't that bad, but we have to kind of like grow and we have to learn our craft, and we can't expect out there and be amazing right from the off. We have to just get out there and take action and be consistent, and that takes time. And it's about, I think if you're really committed to actually I just want to be somebody who's out there creating really great content and that's really helping people, that's changing their lives, that's helping them make some kind of transformation in their work or business, you are going to get known because your mission is to be as good as you possibly can be, not to be well known or influential. Does that kind of make sense?
It does, absolutely. And it's like building a business. What business person became successful overnight?
I can't think of a single one.
So let's talk about the changing face of news, because it's something that's on my mind, because I'm creating some content around it, and the role that fake news plays in the news feeds on social media. And actually my 8-year-old Bobby said to me yesterday there was something on the news about fake news, and he rolled his eyes and tut-tutted going, "Who believes fake news anyway, Mum? They're dumb." And I have agreed with them, but of course the fake news can be very sophisticated. How do we get around that whole issue right now?
I think we just have to be discerning about any information that we come across on the internet. It's so easy. I mean, I tweeted something the other day. I read a news story about something that the head of the London Met had said here. And somebody took massive umbrage to what I had shared, and it was actually the BBC headline that I'd used. And I thought to myself, is that misleading? Is it right for them to think that? Is it right for me to be sharing that? And I thought to myself, I just should have taken a moment before I shared that to think about where was that coming from. And as it happened, it came from a very reliable source, and it was perfectly straightforward news story. But actually, I do think we just have to be careful and we have to be discerning. And I think there's so much information in front of us that it's just tempting to kind of hit share or hit send. And actually, I just think we need to be a bit more discerning and just be careful about where we get our news from.
So, keeping on that theme of the disruption of news and media, how then do we pitch journalists in the digital age? Has that changed? This is one of your specialist topics.
I don't think so. I mean, journalists are still in the business of creating great content that is a great fit for their audience. I've just spent, as we're getting on this call, I don't do it very often, but I've just spent 2 weeks filling in for an editor at The Guardian. So I've been that person who's been getting the pictures and the press releases and making a decision about what we go with and what we don't go with. And none of that's changed. Basically, it's just like, have you got something interesting that my audience are going to find interesting, relevant, they're going to want to talk about with their friends, that's going to surprise them, that's going to delight them, that's going to make them angry even, so the kind of principles of what makes great media content haven't changed. And I think that thing, the biggest mistake people make when they're pitching journalists is to make it all about them and what they want to get out of the transaction. And I think it's still exactly the same. I think the good news is that it's easier to connect with journalists now. I think Twitter is often a really overlooked resource. Any journalist that you want to get hold of nowadays, you can pretty much, really high profile people, you can get in touch with them in a few clicks. And most journalists are very receptive to being contacted in that way. I think press releases they've still got a place, but as an editor myself, I don't care how that pitch turns up. It could come on the back of an envelope, it could come on blue paper or whatever. If it's a great story, I'm going to say yes to it. And I still think there are a lot of organisations that are wasting a lot of time and resources, and businesses as well, in hiring people to write press releases or writing press releases themselves. But the key thing is, we talk about in journalism, we talk about the 10-word top line. If you can't say what your story is in 10 words or less, then I'm not going to be able to make a decision about whether it's interesting or not. That's the key. And I think people are still spending a lot of time, and Twitter actually is a great example of that. You could pitch a journalist an idea on Twitter, in 140 characters. We've got a few more now, haven't we? But so I think it's really good news in terms of, it's much easier to journalists are much more accessible now. You don't even have to meet them in person. You just have to be out there, networking with them, having conversations, sharing their content. And I think it's really good news for people who do want to get featured in the mainstream media.
And you've also evolved your own business, and essentially becoming almost like a publishing house yourself. Talk to us a little bit about that. Was that necessity or was it strategic business decision?
So I think it's Gary Vee that says this, isn't it? Everybody's got to be their own media house these days, and I really, really subscribe to that. I didn't set out to do any of what I've done. I just thought initially, I want people to be able to find me online. What's the best way for people to do that? Oh, maybe I'll start a blog, because if I blog, then people will be able to find me online. And then I learned about SEO, and then I learned about other ways of people finding my content. Same with my podcast. I thought, I want people to be able to find me. I want to be able to connect with people. So I'll just create this content. But it's interesting for me as a journalist from a traditional background. Like I said, I just spent a couple of weeks working on The Guardian as an editor in a mainstream publishing house, and I do feel off the back of that experience that actually there's a bit of catching up to do from the mainstream media. I still feel a little bit bound by old school approach to content, and I feel, it's interesting, when I was there for a couple of weeks, I was using the same kind of almost news values that I use in my own content, in my own blog, my podcast, my social media content that I create, to commission content as an editor in a mainstream traditional publication, and the outcome was a lot better. I think I felt that I feel like I'm a better journalist for it. I'm a better content creator for just thinking more about how people want to engage with content in the 21st century. Does that kind of make sense?
Absolutely. So with the noise, and it's really hard to get through the noise of the internet, how do we stand out online and gain attention? What are your master tips that we can learn from?
So my master tip is that it's never about you. So if you want to create really engaging content, you've just constantly got to be thinking about your audience. And people love talking about themselves. So they love sharing their stories. They love giving their opinions. They love sharing their own tips. So I always think, whenever I'm publishing a piece of content, whether it's a blog post, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a social media update, I think, how can I basically talk about what I want to talk about? So get on the subject. So if I want to talk about events, or if I want to talk about, because I'm, running a live event in the summer and I'm promoting that, if I want to talk about podcasting, or if I want to talk about online courses or something, how can I put this content out there in such a way that is about them, is about the audience, but allows me to talk about what I want to talk about? So just to give you an example, today I've got a new podcast episode out, which is all about how to use social media to promote live events. So I could just post that out and just say on my Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, here is my latest podcast episode. You will get some lovely tips on how to promote your event. But what's much more effective is for me to ask a question and turn it back to my audience and say, do you run live events? Like, how are you doing your ticket sales? And I give an option. I'll say, yes, I'm doing brilliantly with my sales. B, I'd love to run events, but I'm worried I won't sell any tickets. C, this is not really for me and my business. And I find that whenever I just turn it round and turn it back on the audience, whatever it is that I'm doing, how can I make it about them, not about me? Then I get to talk about what I want to talk about, and people get to hear about my event, but feel like they're being sold to. And that really is my tip. And everything I do in all of my work, it's not even conscious. It's just, I'm just always thinking, and maybe this is the journalism background, I'm just always thinking about my audience. It's about my audience. It's not about me.
It's really about retraining your brain and reframing the conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I've recently, I've stopped scheduling pretty much on all of my social media platforms. I came back, I was at Social Media Marketing World in San Diego in March. And when I came back, I made a Twitter list of all the speakers at the event, all these kind of influencers who are like social media marketing experts. Because I thought, you know what, I'm going to follow them. I'm going to retweet their stuff. I'm going to engage with them. And I noticed something. I noticed that most of them were just broadcasting. They were just broadcasting their latest podcast, blog episode, their latest piece of content. And I thought, you know what, I've been doing the same. I'm out there telling people what I think they should be doing on social media, and just on Twitter, not necessarily elsewhere. I'm doing the same. In the month or so since I completely stopped scheduling, and just have just been organically just spending time talking to people, starting conversations, my visits to my profile have gone up 90%. My engagement has gone up 8 times, and I feel like we're moving through an age where information I think people don't want that anymore. I think they want to have conversations and they want social media to be really social media. So that will be another tip for me. I think if you want to engage people, you want to build a community, you want people to buy your products or services or come to your events or whatever it is, you need to be out there having conversations. I think if you're just pumping out, you're just broadcasting, I think more than ever, I think people are just not engaging with that content at the moment.
Great tip, and something big for us all to think about. So finally, Janet, let my audience know where they can find you, because you mentioned your event, you mentioned your podcast, and you've also got a mastermind community and a membership group. So share it with us.
So the best place to find me is at my website, which is janetmurray.co.uk. You can also find me over on Twitter, Jan_Murray. I'm very active there. I'm over on Instagram, Jan Murray UK, Facebook, Janet Murray UK. I have a huge free Facebook community, which has got about 12,500 members, and that's a great place to start with me and my content, and really great place to kind of drop in. I've got a podcast, which is the Soulful PR podcast, but the name will be changing soon, so it's best to go to my website and find out more about that. And I'm also running an event in London on July the 5th and 6th, 2018, which is called Influence Live, and it's to come along and meet journalists and influencers from the traditional media, so BBC, Guardian. So who else have I got? People from, I got this time, Grazia magazine, The Sun's Fabulous magazine, also got top podcasters, YouTubers, so we're kind of mixing the old and the new. Really, really great opportunity to come and build your media influence.
Okay, Janet Murray, PR and marketing expert and all-round digital conversationalist. Thank you so much for joining me on JSB Talks Digital.
Thanks for having me.